In November 1973, Arthur Ashe broke the racial barrier when he became the first African American to compete in international tennis. He used his fame to promote human rights, education, public health, and to fight against apartheid and AIDS. Arthur Robert Ashe was born on July 10, 1943, in Richmond, Virginia. His mom died when he was only 6 years old. Ashe met Ronald Charity, one of the best black players in the nation, and Ronald decided that he liked Arthur, so he decided to teach him how to play tennis. 3 years later, Arthur was very good at the game, but Ronald felt he needed a proper coach to advance to the next level. This is when Ronald introduced Ashe to Dr. Johnson, who is currently coaching Althea Gibson, the only African American competing in world tennis at the time. Arthur played under Dr. Johnson and soon began to accomplish great achievements. He broke a barrier by becoming the first African American to play in the Maryland Boys Championships, and he traveled around the country competing in tournaments. He loved tennis but was limited to black opponents only in a blacks court only outside. The University of California recognized his success and offered him a full scholarship to attend college. After graduating first in his class, Arthur went to UCLA, which had one of the best tennis programs. During that year, he became the first African American to join the U.S. Davis Cup team, breaking another barrier yet again. In 1965, Arthur won the individual NCAA championship. He was soon drafted into the U.S. Army from 1966 to 1968 and became a second lieutenant during his time. He continued to play tennis there and participated in tournaments. When Ashe returned from the Army, he co-founded the National Junior Tennis League with Chari Pissarro. The program invited kids to play tennis. Arthur Ashe went professional in 1969 and tried to apply for a visa to travel to South Africa to play in the South African Open. During that time, South Africa's government enforced apartheid, a policy of racial segregation. Because of this, South Africa denied him of a visa. Arthur Ashe continued to apply for visas, but South Africa kept denying him. He used this example of racism to protest for the expulsion of South Africa from the International Tennis Federation. Arthur continued to play in different tournaments, winning the Australian Open in January 1970.
Well played.
This was his second Grand Slam title. He became a famous tennis player and tennis was becoming more and more popular. He partnered in creating the Association of Tennis Professionals, or ATP, in 1972. South Africa decided to give Arthur a visa a year later. He then broke another barrier by becoming the first black pro to play in the national championships. On July 5, 1975, Arthur Ashe beat Jimmy Connors in Wimbledon and broke another barrier by becoming the first African American to gain #1 men's ranking in the world. Arthur married Jean Matusami on February 20, 1977. They had one child named Camara. He suffered a heart attack during a tennis clinic in 1979 and had to go through a quadruple bypass surgery later that year. He continued to suffer chest pains throughout 1980 and decided to retire from tennis. On June 21, 1983, Arthur Ashe went through a double bypass heart surgery. During this year, he founded Athletes Against Apartheid with Harry Belafonte, who was a singer and an activist. He also founded the Arthur Ashe Institute for Urban Health to help address issues of inadequate healthcare delivery to urban minority populations. Ashe wrote many books after he retired from tennis, like A Hard Road to Glory and Arthur Ashe on Tennis. Arthur Ashe learned that he had contracted AIDS via blood transfusion. His friend Doug Smith, who is a reporter from USA Today, learned that Ashe had AIDS, and his editor wanted to run a story about it. Ashe felt angry that he was put into a position of having to lie to protect his privacy. He thought that going public would compromise his family's lives and take away time from his activist work. Ashe announced he had AIDS in a nationally televised press conference at the offices of HBO. Shortly after this event, he founded the Arthur Ashe Foundation for the Defeat of AIDS, which raised money for research into treating, curing, and preventing AIDS.
I have known, of course, that I have AIDS since September 1988 and lived a relatively free life with very few opportunistic infections until just recently. I have done quite a bit of reading and research on the subject, and most of you know that last summer I formed the Arthur Ashe Foundation for the Defeat of AIDS to raise money for AIDS-related projects and also to raise public awareness and help educate the public about this pandemic.
Arthur Ashe inspired many people, especially Black people, showing them that you can do anything. He impacted society by protesting and founding federations and foundations. He helped kids build character through tennis with the National Junior Tennis League. Even Serena Williams, one of the most famous tennis champions today, considers Arthur Ashe as one of her biggest heroes. I have an opportunity to be here because of him. It motivated me reading stories about how Arthur wasn't allowed to play when he was young. Because of what he went through, I have the opportunity to be the best that I can be. Arthur Ashe was an activist that used his fame to inspire people, fight for his rights as well as others, raise awareness, and more. He wrote books about his journey and his obstacles. He broke barriers throughout his entire career and founded organizations that would later help others in life. Sadly, Arthur Ashe died from pneumonia on February 6, 1993, at 48 years old. If he had still been alive today, we would see more changes in society and sports altogether.